This is the Good Government Show.
American Forest is the oldest conservation organization in the U.S. We are 150 years old. And as the name entails, we believe that forests and trees are really critical parts of building healthy communities, both in larger landscapes as well as the urban environment. We think about trees as being critical infrastructure, and they are, because we know that areas that do have trees within cities can be 20 degrees cooler than areas that without trees. Good government utilizes truthful data to respond to existing challenges in their cities and respond to the needs of their communities. We are in a moment in time for us to be rethinking what it means for us to govern, what it means for us to serve residents.
On today's show, we're going to talk a lot about trees. Here's a fun fact I didn't know. Trees can make a neighborhood as much as 20 degrees cooler. Coming up, Benita Hussian of American Forest is going to tell us how trees can make a big impact on cities and communities everywhere. Welcome to the Good Government Show. I'm Dave Martin. First, help us share the message of good government by liking us and sharing us where we are on Facebook, X, YouTube, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Please share our show with your friends and review us where you're listening, and join our Good Government Show community. Check out our website for the link. Earlier this summer, I attended the Conference of Mayors annual event in Tampa. I sat in on a session called Climate Resiliency and Community Engagement. Benita was on the panel, and trees were a major topic of discussion. She's the Chief Program Officer for a project called Tree Inequity for the nonprofit organization American Forests. On future shows, you'll hear from mayors in West Hollywood, where palm trees are a huge issue. Just listen. And mayors from Tucson, Boise, and Columbus, Missouri. We have a lot of tree conversation coming up. But I wanted to start with Benita Hussian and American Forest to get a good overview of how trees make a difference. Here's a few quick highlights before we get into the conversation. When Benita thinks of trees, she thinks of them as infrastructure, as important as sidewalks and bridges. So think about that for a minute. American Forest calls it tree inequity. That means some neighborhoods have more trees than others. Imagine your favorite neighborhoods. I bet there are trees there, lining the streets, casting shade, and just looking pretty. Trees provide neighborhoods with cooler temperatures, better air quality, and even lower crime. She says by identifying neighborhoods with less trees, they know where to focus to improve them with more trees. While in this conversation we focused a lot on trees in cities, American Forest does a lot more. They were founded in 1875. They helped create the U.S. Forest Service, national parks, FDR's Civilian Conservation Corps, and Arbor Day. In the past 30 years, they've planted more than 65 million trees. So, get ready to hear all about trees. Yep, simple trees, but they make a huge difference. My conversation with Benita Hussian of American Forest is coming up after this. The Good Government Show is sponsored by Our. That's O-U-R for Our Community. Get involved. We hear that all the time from government leaders. Our co-brands with your government's name and logo. Your staff and the people you serve are connected and part of your community. From any device, your members provide reliable data and meaningful feedback. Ask a question like, do we want more parkland or better homeless services? More engaged conversations come through the Our app. Visit Ourco, that's OURCO.com, and book a demonstration. It was called the War to End All Wars, but it didn't. 3 royal cousins, all kings, one from England, one from Germany, and one from Russia, blundered their way into a war, a completely avoidable war that left millions dead in the trenches across Europe. Good Government Show executive producer Jim Ludlow details the blunders, mistakes, and bluster that started World War I that didn't end all wars. The book, The Royal Cousins, details the events and creates an alternative history. Imagine if World War I never happened. It didn't have to. Just read it yourself. Download the book today on Amazon. It's just 99 cents and a timely look at history. On this episode of the Good Government Show, I have Benita Hussian, who's not in government, but does very good work supporting government and planting trees with American Forest. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. And I should mention that I used to work for government, so I have a lot of experience with that.
You did?
Yes.
You got out?
Yeah, I did get out, but
okay.
I enjoy helping cities. And so the work I do now is really about supporting cities just from a different angle.
So you run an organization called American Forest. What is American Forest?
Sure. American American Forest is the oldest conservation organization in the U.S. We are 150 years old. And as the name entails, we believe that forests and trees are really critical parts of building healthy communities, both in larger landscapes as well as the urban environment. So my work is to really focus on that urban side. How do we ensure that those who do not have the benefits of trees receive them from our work?
And it turns out we are almost neighbors in Brooklyn.
That's right.
Okay. And so I had a tree in front of my house. The city put it in. It died. They put another one in. It died. They put another one in. It died. Now I just have a blank piece of dirt in front of my house. Is my experience typical?
You know, I think that you have one specific experience living in the city of New York, but our work is really about looking at how cities across the country truly need this critical infrastructure. And so if we think about trees as being critical infrastructure, and they are, because we know that areas that do have trees within cities can be 20 degrees cooler than areas that without trees. And if we think about that, and we think about the fact that trees are living, breathing infrastructure, we need to be investing dollars into maintaining and protecting those trees in ways that all the community benefits. So what you're experiencing is one of those bad luck, but we also just know that when taken as a whole, as a system, urban forests are actually very critical for lives.
So you said something interesting I wanted to pick up on. Trees are infrastructure.
Yes.
I did not think of them that way.
We feel that trees are as important as sidewalks and sewers. Essentially, when you look at the entire built environment, and there's so much more information now that tells us the built environment has actual impacts on people's health and well-being, their civic pride, the ways that they engage with their community. Trees are at the center of that. And so, and even in the current climate of us looking at climate change and flooding and extreme heat, trees have the ability to clean and cool our cities in ways that are actually vital at this moment in time.
Well, which leads me to my next question. What do trees do?
Trees have a myriad of benefits for the urban landscape. It sort of straddles everything from, again, addressing extreme heat. As I mentioned, neighborhoods with trees can be 20 degrees cooler.
So that's 20 degrees is a very significant change.
Absolutely, yeah.
How does that work? I mean, I'm not a scientist. Are you?
I'm not, but I work with trees quite a bit.
Okay.
And basically trees are, they have shade elements, right? They also have evapotranspiration, which is basically trees sweating water into the air, and all those two things combined, especially when they're part of a healthy tree canopy, connected forest or connected neighborhood with trees, you feel different. You feel that difference. And so, and I think any of us on a hot day can walk outside in a gray concrete jungle and know the difference between that and walking through a park. And one of the main thrust of our work in American Forest is that while we know trees are important for cities, we also know that many, many people within cities do not have those benefits. And those are typically across socioeconomic lines. And so what we see is true tree inequity in cities. And our work is really to help invest more of those trees into those places that do not have those benefits. And just in terms of other benefits, we know that they help cleanse the air. So some cities are investing in trees to address respiratory disease. In other places, they're investing in trees in order to fight community violence, right? Trees beautify communities, they cool communities, and those things combined make people have mental health improvements, and that actually has actual impacts on their violence.
I have thought more about trees today than I've probably thought about trees in my life. Is it hard when you look at this across the nation, in cities across the nation, to convince mayors and city council people that trees are infrastructure and that there is such a thing? I never heard the phrase tree inequity before. I mean, is this a hard sell?
No, well, in the last 5 years, American Forest being in the lead of this, we named this issue of tree inequity through a data tool that we call Tree Equity Score. It maps 2,600 metro areas across the country against those socioeconomic lines of tree canopy. And what we are able to say, and this forms the foundation for our advocacy, is that communities of color tend to have 38% less tree cover and are 13 degrees hotter, and lower income communities have 26% less tree cover and are 6 degrees hotter. Our ability,
why is that?
Well, that his historical disinvestments and racist policies such as redlining have created, truly have created, have changed the way cities were planned.
You went right there.
Have truly changed the ways cities have been invested in and planned, and some people reap those benefits and some don't. And so that data has allowed us to work with federal policymakers, state policymakers, and city government on saying the data's here. let's extrapolate this data to what it looks like at the local level, and you will see the stark difference in heat, in social disparity, and that has been actually the game changer for this entire movement. And in 2023, when the IRA passed, or 2022, excuse me, when the Inflation Reduction Act passed, we were able to get $1.5 billion into the USDA's package just for urban forestry based on that data.
We're going to talk about some neighborhoods that you and I know that most people don't. You look at places like Brownsville or East New York, which are some of the harder, rougher, poorer neighborhoods in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. What can you do there? And are they able to have trees planted there?
Yes. So, that tree equity score tool, if you were to do that overlay, right, of income with trees, you will absolutely see where the trees are and are not. And so places that, the nice areas like Park Slope, Fort Greene, areas in Carroll Gardens, those are very high tree equity scores because we have a lot of trees and a lot of affluence. Right. Areas like Brownsville, and actually this is true across the country. But I know those places. Yeah, sure. But the areas that don't have trees are often the ones that have more gray infrastructure, have more impermeable spaces, require far more investment in capital projects to break down sidewalks and get trees in there and then maintain them for the long term. So I would say there are about 2 or 3 things you really need. One is you need money. You need funding, and that's what the IRA offered. You've got 500 cities. Some cut of that $1.5 billion allowed cities to look at these as capital improvements and to change the ways that their cities were built and planted. You also need community buy-in.
These are big issues, though.
Yes, they absolutely are.
Coming up with the money and changing the way they think. How are you successful at doing that?
Well, it's changing the way they think. So again, that data, mayors across the country, and I want to say that mayors, governors, local leaders, they care about the well-being of their communities. This is one of the best things about working with mayors, right? Is that they look on a day-to-day basis of how their residents are doing. And so if we say to them, your communities actually lack trees and you're having actual impacts on heat and death and disease, they care about that. And that argument isn't hard. What we need to understand is how do we make trees as part of the full package of priorities the city has, right? That could be anything from homelessness and affordable housing and all things, but we want to say that trees should be part of the fabric of a city's well-being, and that's why we say that it's critical infrastructure. So I don't think the argument is super hard for local leaders. I think the importance of keeping trees alive, planted and alive in the long term, and so they're not facing things like you were facing in your own neighborhood is a challenge, and is one that requires us, and that's why we really need the community's buy-in. So I think that's the other piece that we need, including funding, is the ability for communities to come to the table and say, we do actually want this here, and we promise not to cut down the trees when you put them in. And so that's that sort of coalition building at the local level. It has to be municipal government as well as community groups coming together and saying, this is the way that we want to rethink about our cities.
And what kind of trees are you planting?
It just depends, right? Our work is very science driven. So when we work with local communities, we look at certainly what the native trees are. We take an inventory. We help take an inventory of the current stock, and then also think about the changing environment. In an ideal state, we're actually looking at the ways that cities are changing in terms of climate, in terms of weather. And we are helping recommend the types of species that work for that new environment in that specific geography. So the best thing we can do is hope that we're selecting site-specific trees. We're not going to take tropical trees and drop them into New England because that wouldn't be appropriate. We do need to work with local government on what the right inventory and science is there.
And is there any kind of move to plant the trees that were native to that region maybe 100 years ago or 200 years ago, or how does that work?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it just depends on the city, and again, what is appropriate, what is cost effective, and what is going to last in the long term, and those are all parts of the calculus for a city to come to the table around.
Do you have tree farms?
Yes. So some of our growing body of work is helping communities develop nurseries and or help them source the appropriate trees from nurseries around the country. And I will say that one of our other challenges is the seed stock. So that's a third thing that we need, really, is the funding. We need the community buy-in, and we need the supply. And that supply is going to come from local businesses, local job trainees, those that we want, and scientists in these areas that can help us identify where the seeds are and how to cultivate them for those urban environments.
Do you have a staff of scientists and arborists, that are part of American Forest?
We do. I mean, we have a cabal of experts that I like to, that we deploy into the field. We deploy them to help work with cities that have demonstrated interest and motivation to do this work with us. We have over 100 cities that we are directly engaged with, and that is overlaps also with the 500 cities that did receive that Inflation Reduction money. So there's just a huge amount of momentum around this.
Just walk me through a little bit about how American Forest works with a city. I mean, how does it start? Mm-hmm. How do you get to tree canopies?
Yeah, so everything, it starts, we like to say that cities often, we choose our own adventure. So there's some mayors that have seen the impacts of not having trees in their communities, and they know they need them. So a place like Phoenix, with Mayor Kate Gallego, she worked with us saying the city of Phoenix is grappling with extreme heat, and my residents can't walk to work safely. The kids can't get to school safely. How do I make sure that we start to get more trees in the right places? So she actually made a commitment at the highest level, at the mayoral level, saying, I want tree equity in all of my cities in the coming decades.
She used the phrase you coined. Good.
Yeah, and she used the tree equity word. And so that was one intervention, right? So then she's able to pull our experts in and help her with all that science and planting and other forms of need that a city might need. Others did receive some of that $1.5 billion, and so they now have catalytic money. It's startup money for doing this type of work, and they reach out to us and go, we have this new money. We want to implement these dollars. How do we do it in the best way possible? And so our team is able to be deployed to help them with their best practices around tree care and nursery development and planting and policy making.
So you send out that cabal.
Yeah, it's our cabal of experts. And then the others are just kind of basically coming to things like this event, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, which is one of our prime events for us to approach cities and say, if you're thinking about climate change, if you're thinking about public health, if you're thinking about respiratory health, how do we, as tree people, help support those priorities for you? And then there's often sort of that type of dialogue that allows us to help them reset their priorities or help them integrate trees into those plans.
And American Forest is working with, I think you said, 100 cities across the United States.
Yeah.
In some level of planting trees.
Yeah, some level of work. So it's either planting trees, or sometimes it's workforce development programs that they are really interested in building a pipeline of urban foresters. And sometimes it's actually just straight policy making or new financing tools that they can use to get more trees in the ground and protect them. So it's all sorts of interventions that we offer.
So I recently have learned that there is a palm tree problem in Los Angeles. I'm going to get into this a little bit more with another mayor. But briefly, my understanding is that palm trees are not native to Southern California.
No.
They are a huge problem.
Yep.
And they are all dying. And there's a great debate whether they should replace them with palm trees or more native trees.
Correct.
Are you involved in this issue at all? We
witness this issue quite a bit. So we work quite a bit with the Southwest, and that's also an issue in Arizona. And then we see that issue certainly in the Southeast. And our take is that those are not the appropriate trees for these environments. They require a lot of care, a lot of water in places that are water scarce. We need to be looking at and they're also not trees, by the way. They're grasses.
Okay.
They're actually grass. And so the benefit.
You've become an arborist.
Yeah. So I mean, my team tells me this all the time. They've underscored this. So when we think
palm trees are not trees.
Palm trees are not trees. They're grass.
Okay.
And so when you think about trees and the benefits that they offer, carbon sequestration, evapotranspiration, the ability to connect into systems of urban greening, palm trees don't do that. And so when we're talking about how we build tree equity, we need to be looking at, the types of trees and appropriate types of trees.
But they're pretty.
They are pretty. But I think we've all learned.
And half of the city's logos are palm trees.
Yeah.
Especially in LA County.
We are in a moment in time for us to be rethinking what it means for us to govern, what it means for us to serve residents, what it means for us to address climate change and the many, many other challenges around that. And if it requires us to rethink palm trees, I think we should try.
Okay.
Just try. That's all I'm asking for. Well, fascinating stuff. Like I said, I've thought more about trees today at the Conference of Mayors since I saw the discussion when you had some 20 mayors sitting around a table talking about trees they'd planted in their city.
Yes, yeah.
That must make you feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a lot of hard work by a lot of people, including, I do not want to understate this, the community advocacy, the grassroots work that happens in all of these cities are critical. So when we are able to, arm community advocates, frontline organizations with that data tool I was talking about, or engage them in the tree planting, or engage their youth in understanding why urban greening matters, that is very, very powerful. And they've been doing that work for much longer than than today. And so we want to uplift those voices as well.
How many trees have you planted this year, in how many cities over the course of American forest life?
It's hard to estimate that. What I will say is that our work to unlock that $1.5 billion allowed us to measure that 2.1 million trees would be planted through those dollars. And that is a significant number. And that's just 2.1 million being planted, and an extraordinary number that we also need to protect and maintain.
All right. Well, we have now completed the easy part of the discussion. We're going to get into the hard part of the discussion.
Oh, that was the hard.
Yes,
that was the easy part.
That was the easy part.
Okay.
That was the easy part. So coming up is the hard part.
Sure.
We're going to get to your true thoughts on government.
Once you wrap up this episode of The Good Government Show, give a listen to our friends over at Good News for Lefties. This daily podcast highlights news stories that show there's more good news out there. Other people in government are really trying to do the right thing. That's Good News for Lefties. Listen where you're listening now. After you get done with this episode, hear more good government stories with our friends at How to Really Run a City. Former mayors Kasim Reed of Atlanta and Michael Nutter of Philadelphia, and their co-host, journalist and author Larry Platt, talk with guests and other mayors about how to really get stuff done in cities around the nation. Check them out where you're listening now, or through their nonprofit news site, thephiladelphiacitizen.org/podcasts.
All right. You said you worked in government. Where did you do? Where were you in government?
I've worked for a number of different mayors. So I worked for the mayor of Boston, Mayor Menino.
Okay.
I worked for Mayor Walsh, his successor, for a little bit of time. And then I also worked with Mike Bloomberg at his philanthropy following my time with the Boston mayors. And I've also worked in affordable housing early in my career for the city of New York.
All right. Well, that was certainly a challenge. So
Yeah.
You're well familiar with many of the houses.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is the Good Government Show questionnaire. Define good government.
Good government utilizes truthful data to respond to existing challenges in their cities and respond to the needs of their communities.
That's like a lot of things.
Sure. Yeah. That's why governing is hard, right?
Yes.
Because you need to, and I think mayors face that all the time, and mayors being the ones who I closest work with, I consider them almost CEOs of cities, and they have a lot of different demands and a lot of different voices, and they're responsible for executing and using different forms of tools to get things done.
If people look out their window and they hear this show and they go, we should have more trees, what should they do?
They should do a few things. They should call their local government to see what the tree programs are, because often that's actually what is missing, is that information sharing from government or from tree advocates and nonprofits. And they can see that often they have the ability to get trees for free. So first they find out they're free tree programs, and if they're not, there's the opportunity to advocate for those as well.
Just start making calls.
Yeah, start making
leaders?
calls.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because as I said, right, governing is responding to your constituents in some ways.
What drew you into public service, and then what drew you into trees?
So I grew up in the city of New York, and I just love cities in particular. I love the urban landscape. I love the dynamic energy. I love seeing different types of people living in the same spaces, and I think just being around people always made me understand that I'm connected to people, and that whatever we do, we can't disconnect ourselves from society and communities. So I think it's that lived experience, alongside the fact that my parents were immigrants, and so it's a similar idea. It's like you are always connected to each other.
Okay.
And so, I just couldn't imagine living a life where I wasn't doing some sort of public service. And then I worked in affordable housing. And from there, I moved into environmental work for this, after I went to law school. And I continued down this environmental path as an advisor to several mayors. And I loved about working on trees from that, I was working on climate change and urban sustainability, but what I loved about trees was that it was tangible. And I think one of the hardest things about working in climate and environment is how intangible it can feel for people. But trees and parks and green space, you could see a direct benefit in communities, and people could say, yeah, if I have that, I know it's good for me.
Did you ever walk around places like the city of Phoenix and go, I did that? Those are my trees.
Yeah. We do that. In Boston, we do that. We have a lot of community partners that do those tree plantings. And again, I want to give them full credit for the ones that do that.
Who inspires you?
At this moment of my life, I think my husband inspires me.
Okay.
Yeah, he works in food and ag and food equity. And I work in tree equity, so we both have similar kind of commitments to public service, and we drive each other forward.
You said you started off working for the city of New York. Mm-hmm. Did you always envision a career in public service or in government? I
always knew that I wanted to do something bigger and something that would improve people's lives. And I was immediately interested in environmental justice and the built environment always. And so housing and affordable housing always seemed like a very important part of that mix.
Were you president of your high school class?
No.
Oh, you seem a little bitter. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Governing is hard.
Yes. You worked in government and now you work with government. Now you assist government to help them improve. What would you like people to know about government?
That it's super important. And I think that in this current time of shifting sands, when we have federal leaders who are trying to dismantle government, I think it's actually it's a very regressive look at how to build efficiencies. I mean, I don't mean to be even coded, right? Government and regulations and the ways we govern are all very, very important part of society, and it always needs to be improved, of course, with changing times. But the dismantling of our government infrastructure is very worrisome.
What can you do about it?
I think it's important for us just to keep on doing the work, being here and being around folks that are still doing the work. And again, mayors the lights are never off for mayors, right? They're constantly.
Right.
And so to be in a room with folks who are still moving forward and be like, we are still taking care of our cities, and we are not shying away from the truth, and we're still talking about real science and data, is very invigorating. So I think it's important just to keep connected to that, like that hope is there. And I think it's really important for institutions to start to rally in order to make sure that we can still survive this time.
What's the best part of your job?
Best part of my job is actually that. It's that connection with folks who are doing the work and who I feel some allyship with, like here.
If you could pick one city in America where you feel like, you've had an impact, what would that city be and what would people see if they went there? I
certainly feel like Phoenix certainly would be up there because of, all of the efforts they're putting there. I mean, it's still grappling with all of these with extreme heat, and will continue to do so. But I really love working, we have started a statewide collaborative in Washington State where there's a goal for every city across Washington State to have tree equity over the coming decades. And it's the small towns that I really love seeing stories coming from. So, and not when I say small, it's not, some of them are not small, but it's like, the Spokanes or some of kind of the lesser, the unusual suspects when it comes to this stuff. Yeah.
All right. What do you do for fun?
I surf.
Where?
In Rockaway, New York.
Are you one of those?
Yes. Yeah. And
are you one of those that does it? So Rockaway Beach is in Queens. Mm-hmm. It's way down, and the water can be rather cold.
Yes.
So there's a full wetsuit crowd that's out there at 6 a.m. Are you one of those?
Yes, I am.
Oh.
All winter long.
Are you really?
Yes. Yeah.
And I should point out that you're about 5'2" and about 98 pounds.
Yes. All of those things are true. All
right.
Yeah.
Go to the website, look at her picture, and you can say, oh my goodness.
Yes.
Where did you learn to surf?
I learned to surf in New Jersey, so not far away. Yeah. Some friends of mine back then 10, 15 years ago taught me, and I got hooked, and that was it.
Back when you were a student in your summer house at the Jersey Shore?
Yeah, basically.
Basically, and now you go out to Rockaway. How often do you get out there?
I try to go, in the summer months, I try to go once a week. In the winter months, maybe once a month, because it is hard. It's hard and cold.
Do you have a dry suit?
No, just a thick wetsuit.
Okay, I did the polar bear plunge 1 year in Coney Island. That's as close as I come.
Yeah.
Well, that is fun. And I meant to ask you this. You live in Brooklyn?
Yes.
Do you have trees in your yard? Do you have a Brooklyn backyard?
I do have a Brooklyn backyard. I also live right next to Fort Greene Park. So I feel, tree equity score of 100.
Oh, good.
Where I am. Again, very lucky to be right next to Fort Greene Park, and I have a backyard. And, we are very lucky compared to a lot of other folks.
Have you planted any trees?
We have not. We have planted trees in the backyard. Okay. More for gardening and recreational purposes, not for not part of our public planting programs in New York City.
And here's a question that I, again, my own personal experience. Is it hard in a city to keep these trees alive?
It just depends on which city you're talking about. But yes, in general, it is. The urban environment is a harsher environment than, let's say, a big sort of park somewhere.
This is where your cabal of scientists attack the problem? Yeah,
well, we work across with cities, and we try to investigate what works and what does not in those environments, and we try to provide the best expertise around.
So this is the Good Government Show. We always like to end on good government. Tell me what kind of impact you think that American Forest has had, and what are you proudest most, really, of what you've been able to accomplish? And if you've got a great example, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so we really work on every part of the solution when it comes to urban forestry. And I think I'm just proud of the fact that we've tried to, again, be responsive to what is missing from this whole model and from this whole system, and then build programs around that. So we work on workforce development. We work on, again, federal policy that we've talked about. We work on deploying expertise to cities. I think one of the things I'm most proud of and excited about is some of our workforce development, which we didn't talk about very much, but we are starting a very specific focus on how to build a career pathway in urban forestry, again, to share in the economic benefits, but also to continue maintenance of trees in the long term. We need labor to do that. And we've started an initiative to work with formerly incarcerated citizens, returning citizens, on training and apprenticeships and licensing and placement into the job urban forestry workforce. So I'm very excited about that.
Well, that is a lot of good government and a lot of good trees.
Yes.
So thank you for the work.
Thank you.
Benita Hussian of American Forest, it was a pleasure to talk to you and to have the longest conversation I've ever had about trees.
Okay, good. Thank you.
In the city of Fate, Texas, they don't leave good government up to, fate. Join me for another show I host, As Fate Would Have It. My co-host is David Billings, the former mayor of Fate, who shares his opinions and thoughts on what good government is in Fate. As you'll hear, they don't leave it up to fate. So listen right here where you're listening now to As Fate Would Have It. Convinced now to go out and plant some trees? If you're listening and driving home, take a look at the trees in your neighborhood. If you're in your home, next time you walk around the block, look up at those trees. And when you may visit some of the less advantaged neighborhoods in your city, I bet you take a look and see how many trees there are, or aren't. One thing Benita Hussian said sticks out. She said trees are part of the fabric of a city's well-being. After listening to her, I have to agree. So I don't know about you, but I learned a whole lot about trees, and I'll look at trees in an entirely different way. That's my conversation with Benita Hussian of American Forests. There are more shows to come where we talk trees. So keep your gardening tools handy. Well, that's our show. Thanks for listening. Please like us and share us with your friends and review us right here where you're listening. And check out our website, goodgovernmentshow.com, for extras. Help us keep telling stories of good government in action everywhere. Join us again for another episode right here. I'm Dave Martin, and this is The Good Government Show. The Good Government Show is a Valley Park production. Jim Ludlow, Dave Martin, that's me, and David Snyder are the executive producers. Our show is edited and produced by Jason Stershic. Please subscribe, then share us, and like us and review us. That's the best way to make sure we're able to keep telling these stories of our government working for all of us. Then listen to the next episode of The Good Government Show.